Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a guest. We have Emily here. So if you remember and you were watching my weekly updates, I was talking about how much I love doing hot yoga. I was obsessed with it. I still am obsessed with it. Aww, brings a tear to my eye. I miss it. She was my favorite teacher there. I loved her. I loved her classes. And she teaches something very interesting. So, can you explain to us what you teach? Tell the people.
Gladly, thank you. I teach something called Astroyoga. So Astroyoga is the combination of astrology and yoga. They've been linked for thousands of years, but a lot of people don't understand how the zodiac, the planets, the stars link to the physical and subtle energy systems of the body. And so I always plan yoga according to the current transits, and then for individuals, I do it according to their chart and also the current astrology, how it's affecting them.
Wow. So how did you get into this? How did you find this?
Well, over 15 years ago when I was doing my very first teacher training, I was taught a little bit about the astrology yoga connection by my teachers, and I was reading about it in articles, and I just didn't believe it. I was like, this is maybe too intense to be true. I just couldn't quite wrap my head around it at that young age, and so I took to studying astrology at first in an attempt to sort of disprove it, but of course anytime you try to disprove the beautiful traditional system of yoga, you're often, it turns out, the one who's wrong. So I drew up hundreds of charts. I started in Vedic astrology. I also did Western astrology, and I eventually had medical information so accurate and unbelievable on the people who were my sort of test astrology chart people that I wound up going into it professionally, studying it, going to graduate school, the whole shebang, multiple more teacher trainings, and now here I am running the International School of Astroyoga and training teachers in it and talking to you about it. The International School of Astroyoga. So we offer advanced yoga teacher training. We do courses on Astroyoga. We also cover things that are adjacent to it, like we have a course on the tarot. We will eventually have a course on sound healing, because all of these things are connected. And so we examine those things and we teach it in an accessible way online. We've had students in 6 continents, not Antarctica yet, but if anybody's down there, feel free. And it's really a blessing.
How many people teach Astro Yoga right now?
Well, I don't know exactly. We've trained hundreds of people in this modality, so I would assume many, many people. But because it's been around for thousands of years, there are people teaching this. They might not call it Astro Yoga. A lot of people teach Ayurvedically aligned courses, so the traditional medicine system. And that often incorporates astrology. So, but there aren't quite as many as I would like to see. It's not quite the household term I'd like to see it be, but
it's one of those niche things. But once you find out about it, it's so interesting. Like the first time that I had seen her class at the hot yoga studio and I signed up for it, I'm like, wow, this is so exciting. You get to connect these two things together. When you would start the class off and talking about, how the moon's aligned and the sun's aligned, and you would explain like, oh, you might be feeling this way. Every time my mind was blown because it put everything into perspective. Like, oh, yeah, there was maybe like my 3rd class I took with you, and I had been feeling very, very out of my normal feelings. Like usually I'm a pretty, I don't waver too much. I might have little moments of like being excessively excited or excessively sad, but I snap out of it very quickly. And there was this little period where I was like really feeling off. And I came into your class and you explained, oh, you might be feeling like this. And I'm like, this is it. This is why. And I got to leave and I felt so much happier and I felt better. I'm like, everything is explained, my life has purpose now, and I'm okay.
Yeah, that's a very common phenomenon, and something a lot of people don't realize is we live in this fractal universe. And so the things that are happening in the stars are indications of the energetic potencies within you and also externally.
Wow.
We tend to notice it in astrology, right? We're like, oh, we know relationships will be tricky during this time frame, or, job stuff could be tricky at this time frame. But really, when you work with the internal state, you can actually align yourself. And people don't realize this, but you can solve from the inner plane in your yoga practice things like not knowing what to do with your life, having issues in relationships, having issues in finances, having issues in life purpose, in parenting, and all these things. And of course, then you have to take that energetic shift and do something in your life, right? You can't just be like, I fixed it.
Yeah.
But when you start from the inner plane, it's so much easier to make those changes, because it's not a fake it till you make it situation, or like a do this because I know I should situation. It's a natural alignment of your own energies, and then stepping into your true abundance in every area.
Yes. When you mentioned that you have to do something with it once you see it. So today I was watching a video, and they were talking about this thing called lucky girl syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like where girls would manifest, oh, I'm a lucky girl, everything happens to me, everything's good for me. But then, like, the thing that they were talking about is that they just expect it to kind of fall into their laps and not do anything about it. And I think that's what the problem people had with it. So I like that you just said, you can see that, oh, this could be the problem for my work problems. But once you see it, you have to do something about it.
Totally. And the lucky girl syndrome thing, it's like, well, of course, taking a positive mindset is a really good step.
Yes.
So it makes sense that you'd say something to yourself along those lines. But the way manifestation works in astrology and in yoga is that the lunar principle helps you to build reality, and sometimes the Saturn principle too. And with those cycles, which build things into material reality, come the challenges of, can I actually hold this material reality? And so sometimes we want to be abundant, lucky, strong, right? But if you want to be strong, can you face challenges when they occur? If you want to be abundant, are you actually going to be generous? So there's some nuance to it, and of course it's not just like, snap your fingers and the universe delivers. It's recognizing your place in the universe and then trying to align with the highest aspect of yourself.
I always hear, oh, you need to manifest to make things feel better and to do things and to have things happen. But I never understood how those things happen.
Well, the hard truth about manifestation is we're all manifesting all the time. And there's an additional step after you have manifested something. Because if you look, we've manifested all this in a certain way, right? Yep. And manifestation comes to you from others too. So sometimes you get, a bad situation, something seems totally unfair. It's like, well, still within all of the actions of the universe, this has come to your plate. And so regardless of if you manifested it, someone else manifested it, the collective unconscious manifested it, we now have the task of doing something with it. And so there's a step after the natural process of manifestation, which is setting the manifestations in order. And that's like your garden grew something, but then are you going to like weed it, harvest the fruits that you want to eat, well, metaphorically,
yes,
and then move forward to the next cycle of growing.
So recently I attended a paint and sip party, and Emily was actually a part of it. So she was reading all of our astrological charts, and we were also painting our astrology signs and a sun and a moon. It was really cute. And Emily let us know that Alejandro actually created the artwork for your book.
Yeah, so Alejandro and I do these collabs. They're fun. I read astrology charts. We do a cosmic painting. And when I published my book, I asked him to do the cover art because my publisher said, "What do you want on the cover?" At first I said, "I don't know." And then I saw it in a dream. I was like, oh, the very next day. So I called Alejandro. And my book's called Astroyoga for an Aquarian Age. And it's modeled loosely after a couple things with imagery taken from the tarot, specifically the idea of the rising sun and facing the east, and also the river which flows through life. And there's an Aquarius man on the back, and it wraps around to the sunrise under the sign of Aquarius. So if you have, 20, $22, however much it costs on the internet right now, and you want to learn Astroyoga, this is a great resource.
Wow. And we can find that on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. My website has links to it.
Speaking of, what is your website?
I have emilyridout.com. That's my name, and that's where you find personal Astroyoga and astrology readings. And then I have astroyoga.org, one word, and that's where you find the International School of Astroyoga and all of our courses. If you look up Astroyoga, you're sure to find me on Google or...
And all the links will be below in the bio, so go check there. So, back to the Astroyoga. How do you match the astrology chart and the reading to like specific yoga poses?
Great. So everybody has an astrology chart, and everybody has a body, right? Mm-hmm. So the zodiac and the planets play a big role in how you would line it up with the body. So the physical body, every single physical body part is associated with a zodiac sign. And then the actions within the body, whether things are going right, fluidly, or a little wrong, there's some inflammation or an injury, those are associated with planets. Wow. And then furthermore, if we look at the energy systems of the body, most people have heard of the chakra system, mm-hmm. right? The energy vortexes or wheels in the body. They have planetary and zodiacal associations. And then also other layers of the energy body that are less well known, things like the Koshic system, which are layers of the subtle body, those are associated. So that's a lot of, astrology and yoga talk for saying if you understand the body's association with the subtle body, which yoga practitioners are meant to study, we understand how yoga postures affect endocrine system, the limbic system, the different physical systems, your digestion, things like that. If you already know that, and then you learn the associations of the zodiac signs and the planets, it takes some integration, yes, but very quickly you begin to see what the exact poses could be for a practitioner to align themselves with the specific energies in their chart. Now this can be simple, right? You just start with your sun sign or your moon sign and you say, okay, and I have examples in my book and on my Instagram, so you can start there. Or, the more adept you become at reading the astrology, the more it tells a complete story and the more you can select the perfect pose.
You gave me my astrology chart, and will you read some of it for me?
Gladly. So this is your astrology chart.
And what information did you need in order to be able to see what my chart says?
I needed your birth date, mm-hmm. your birth time, mm-hmm. and your location at the time of your birth. So we have your chart, and you had a couple specific things you wanted to tease out, but before we do that, let's just take a peek at what I see as some key factors in your chart. So the first thing I noticed when I glanced at your chart at the Paint and Sip event was that you have, to the exact degree, a Sun-Neptune opposition.
Okay.
So Neptune the planet, the Sun the luminary, you have your Sun at 26 degrees Cancer in the 8th house. And you have your Neptune at 26 degrees Capricorn, retrograding Neptune, by the way, in the 2nd house. The 8th house and the 2nd house are really an interesting dichotomy. It's how do you have value yourself, okay? Including intangible value, like what do you really think in this life about what has value, what holds value to you, and then also tangible value, like your stuff, literally like what do you own, like your clothes or your car or anything, and then money too. And then the eighth house includes all those things, but it's for the collective of your soul family. This can be your literal family that is by blood or marriage, or the family that is chosen and selected by your soul.
Wow.
And so it's where does value intertwine with others? And there's something very deep about both of these houses. And so for your chart, they're very much tied to one another. Your Neptune in Capricorn suggests that you can run a very dreamy, businessy situation for yourself. And it doesn't surprise me we're having this conversation because Capricorn, even though people associate Capricorn with business predominantly, what it actually is associated with is building something. And this includes building something into the future, which we usually associate with business, but also building something from the ancient past. And so it has a sort of slow, steady way of building. But with Neptune, Neptune makes things a little watery, a little dreamy, and a little more dissolved. So it's very likely that you could actually dream your way into financial abundance, into living your values. You could dream your way or meditate your way into opening doors for yourself. And there's more to it, of course, there's nuance there. Maybe we'll discuss some of the further placements in those signs at a certain point, but your Mercury is in your 8th house as well, in Leo, and so that will want to speak to others, and you have Black Moon Lilith there with it, which will want to complain while they speak to others. So those are also tied in there. But the drawing the answer as if from the ether, that is Neptune. And it can be a challenging placement because the sun is your light. And it can literally feel like when there's financial like bills or something comes up out of the blue that you weren't expecting especially, it can almost feel like a drain on your light. But the key thing is, and people don't talk about the earth sign that much in astrology, but Neptune is actually conjoining your earth placement, and that is a portal. And so if you go into that, whatever that feeling is that comes up when you're like, oh, I don't like this, or it's a surprise, if you go deeply into that, not in a way that grips to it, but that really feels it, there's a transcendent portal through solving that very problem.
Yes.
So there's something very interesting there for you.
That makes so much sense because when I felt like I complained to people, I'm like, I swear I'm not complaining, I'm just working through the problem to figure it out, and I'll be okay in a minute.
Another thing that's very interesting in your chart is you have a very special placement that's called a T-square. And a lot of people have T-squares. And a long time ago, people used to say T-squares, they're bad luck. But then the astrologers studied the charts, and it turns out very successful people often have T-squares in their charts.
Okay.
And the way they operate is like this. If you've ever had a car that stalls the engine, right? It's kind of like that. You're like, oh, it's not going, it's not going, it's not going. And then all of a sudden it goes, and you're on your way.
Yeah.
What the T-squares do is they force reconciliation of inner paradox before you can move forward. So people with T-squares sometimes feel like they're stuck. Sometimes it'll be years, you'll be like, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. And then in one moment almost, sometimes within a month, everything changes.
Wow.
And so don't be discouraged, you or anyone who listens with the T-square. But yours is interesting because it's to your chart ruler, which is Jupiter, the planet of truth and detecting the BS in the world,
Mm.
and also the planet of expansion and luck.
Wow.
So Jupiter is the crux of this, but then the other placements are a little tricky. So you might be leaning into your Jupiter a little bit, but it's important to lean into these other two placements if you want to move the energy. And this is probably what I would suggest doing Astroyoga for in your chart, so that that energy is circulating, so you don't have to struggle for long periods. Instead, you get to party with your good self. So the other placements in your T-square, we have Jupiter, which is in Capricorn. We have Saturn, which is in Aries, conjoining your lunar south node.
Okay.
And we have Chiron in Libra, conjoining your lunar north node. Now, these are cardinal signs, which means they like to move towards something. They're directional, and they're going for it.
Wow.
But they're all different elements, so they're going for it in different ways. Aries goes for it directly, and without much thought. They're like, yes, right, or no. Libra goes for it through considering all possible outcomes. Literally the opposite of Aries, right? So Aries is like there, Libra is like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Let's think for a minute.
If I choose, the purple side of the mat versus the white side of the mat, what will happen, And so Libra will sometimes overthink, but the reason they overthink is that they can actually see the karmic outcome of actions. It's a gift. And then the Capricorn piece, we talked about Capricorn for a moment, but it's the slow movement of building something. It's the earth sign that is cardinal, and it sometimes even feels like it isn't moving, right? Because the earth is the densest of the elements, but it is slowly expanding into the thing it most wants to build.
Goosebumps.
So it's probably easy for you to be like, okay, I'm living in growing something land. But something to consider is that these other two placements won't allow you to fully grow what you're growing until you integrate one, Chiron and the direction of your soul. So allowing yourself to be seen in your process, allowing yourself to learn from mistakes, which also means make mistakes, right? And then allowing yourself to then heal that and to return to balance. And a huge part of Libra is learning the art of allowing forgiveness, right?
Ooh.
So Libras are very quick to forgive others sometimes, but not to allow others to forgive themselves, even for little things, right? Sometimes it's like the most minor thing that you would think nothing of if someone else did. So that's a big piece.
Yes. Is there something in there that talks about sensuality, sexuality, all of those things? Is that in there?
Absolutely.
And what does it
so there's a lot. So you could do an entire reading of the chart just for your sensual life if you wanted. If you're just talking about like the sex drive, that is mostly associated with the planet Mars, who rules all of the motivation in the body, the one that gets you to go to hot yoga to move your body, and also the one that gets you to move into your sexual space. And so Mars in your chart is in Gemini.
Oh.
And it's in the 7th house, the house of relationship. Don't worry about Gemini. So there's motivation there to be in partnership. But there also could be a tendency, Mars rules Aries, by the way, to get into a relationship with Martian people, not people from Mars, but people who are a bit more direct, perhaps even militant. You might be attracted to people in the martial arts fields, this sort of thing, which is not bad, but you want to make sure that the type of Mars influence that is there in a relationship is equal to your own capacity to be the champion, the fighter, Gemini as a sign is very interesting. It's the twin, Castor and Pollux, Cain and Abel, cleanliness and pollution. And it points, and actually your Mars is very close to this, to the opposite of the center of the galaxy.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's out there, out in the cosmos, away from our Milky Way home. And Mars in Gemini, what happens is we spiral up or we spiral down. Now you could change that in or out, whatever. But it's very important because it's a procreative energy that spirals. And so you want to feed the direction you want to go. And there's a little bit of a guarding against, it's not that you can never be negative and you have to be all like sunshine and rainbows, but to guard against the downward spiral. So if you're like, oh, I'm attracted to people who aren't good for me, or I'm using my life force energy in a way that's depleting me, or something like that, versus like, oh, I'm using my sexual energy, which is also creative energy, to build something I want. Right? If you drain your sexual energy, you won't have the capacity to build what you want. Right? Whether it's a child or a YouTube station or whatever, or a relationship, right? But if you're procreating metaphorically or literally in a way that builds energy, that creates something more akin to caste or cleanliness versus pollution, which you'll know, right? You'll be like, oh, my body feels good. I have energy. I don't feel those feelings of pain or shame or guilt or doubt from this relationship, right? We do feel those energies sometimes. They just come up from the collective unconscious or a past. It's fine, they can be cleared. But from the situation, right? Yeah. You want to make sure that it's nourishing you, it's feeding you, it's making you feel light, because every single human being deserves to feel that way, especially in their sexual energy, right? Like it's yours, it's your power. You can use it to create what you want. You can use it with whom you want. You can use it in the manner of your choosing. And that's like the Gemini empowerment. So there's that. Your Venus is also in Gemini. We could tease out the details of the degree placements, but I think for our purposes here, we'll just say Venus is love. It's the sensual aspect of that. So you have the drive, and then you have like sensuality. And Venus is there too. And then there's also the moon, which is a connective emotional aspect. And that's in Virgo. So it's a very different energy, although they're both ruled by Mercury. Okay. Virgo can be a bit perfectionistic. So it would be good for you to be with someone somewhat detail-oriented in their level of care for you. So you're going to like it a lot more if they remember how you like your coffee or your morning beverage. Things you like or don't like. If they take note of the things you say and then make a little bit of effort to, to make it a comfortable space for you to be in, If you're like, these sorts of things, that's going to be really key. And then it's also going to be key if you are in an emotionally connective relationship to not get too picky in the little bitty details that could interrupt something magnificent.
That's always my problem. So first, I'll say I always appreciate somebody when they do remember the little things. And I say, oh, wow, like they notice the little things. That's so nice. And then I notice if somebody doesn't, like if somebody forgets my birthday and they've known me for a long time, I'm like, oh, well, they don't like me. They don't care for me the way that I think they do. So that's that. But then with the other part of it, I will find somebody that I enjoy being with. I will spend time with them. I'm like, wow, they could be the one. And then all of a sudden something flips and I'm like nitpicking every single thing they do. The way they breathe, the way they eat, the way they sleep. Everything about them, for some reason, will just flip after about a month or two.
So when that happens, if you like the person and the Mars and the Venus are in a good place, a good thing to ask yourself is, am I noticing these things because I don't feel emotionally cared for?
Oh, okay.
And if you do feel emotionally cared for, then you can be like, okay, maybe I could let it go that they breathe differently than I prefer. Or ask them to take their mouth at night or, whatever you gotta do. Get a breathing stroke. The moon desires to be cared for, and something about Virgo is it rules the intestine. and very specifically, it rules our capacity to digest experience. So if you have any past experiences with partners, with people, of that gender in particular, that are undigested, which we all do. This isn't like we all have things to digest, but your moon might really react against that.
Wow.
So another thing to ask would be is there something, does this suddenly remind me of someone else? Is there a fear coming up that this could morph into that? Does this always happen at a particular stage,
yes,
emotionally or depth of relationship? And do I actually want to break past that and digest this, or is this not the person for me?
Wow.
Those are only you can answer, but that's what I would consider with that placement.
After reading my chart, are you going to be able to show me some poses that I should do to kind of help align things, cleanse things? How do you do this?
Absolutely. So typically, if I did an Astroyoga session with someone, I'd read their chart more in depth than we just did, but I'd read it, and then we would go through usually 6 postures, which I always recommend for a home yoga practice because it's easy. You can do it in the morning, and then we tweak it later on. But I recommend postures that will be supportive of the energies you most want to embody. So for you, I think we can do your Mars and Venus energy because Jupiter's coming through there right now. It's going to be a good time for love. We can do your T-square, some postures to balance that out, and then also that Sun-Neptune opposition.
Oh, that sounds great. All right, let's go.